Raider Nation, what's going on? Coming up here on the Raiders Report, everything that you need to know about Raiders training camp today, because we got some updates around Jimmy Garoppolo, some injury news on Nate Hobbs, and then some discussions around Josh Jacobs, and hey, some guys that did well and didn't do well. I know our live shows are absolutely insane, and I know that a lot of people always say, man, I wish I could support the show with a super chat. Well, guess what? You can support the show without money. You can like every video that we drop. You can comment and share your thoughts, and you can subscribe to the Raiders Report. That really, truly helps Chugs and I out. But let's talk about Jimmy G, because I don't know about y'all, man. Seeing him out on the practice field was exciting, and honestly, there's not a lot to take away from the very first day of training camp, because the way that I look at the first day of training camp is kind of like that first day of school. Like, sure, you're in your classes, you're taking some notes, but really you're just going through the steps. Garoppolo looked like he was in good shape. He stated that he was really never worried about his health or his feet and being ready to go out there onto the football field. He did say that he's not 100% there or not fully there yet, and he is working in the right direction. Probably my favorite thing, though, that Jimmy G had to say was that he was nervous about practice today in terms of having a little bit of the butterflies, which I think butterflies are a good thing. So I reached out to somebody who was at practice, and I said, man, give me the 4-1-1. Give me the lowdown on Garoppolo. And he said, you know, he looked okay, but he looked like a quarterback that's right now with a new team, and I get it. He's been on part of that Josh McDaniels system before, and it sounds like that McDaniels and Garoppolo have been working well together, but he also hasn't really been out there practicing or throwing the football to his receiver. So, okay, but nothing to be super, super excited about. But you know what? I am an excited person. And football, dude, it feels so back. I love talking rumors. Don't get me wrong, man. But when you see actual football going on, it's just different. It gives me chills. So what's your level of confidence in Jimmy Garoppolo? I want you to scale it from 1 to 10. 1 being you're not confident at all. 10 being you are freaking really confident. This is actually going to be the pinned comment on today's show, so scroll on down and let me know. I'm going to go with the 7, and my answer really hasn't changed much on this. Is it fun to be able to see him out there on the field? Is it nice to see him on the first day of training camp? Yes, no doubt about that, and that's why it's a 7, because he is a good quarterback. And I'm on social media, and if you guys don't know, at Mitchell Renz 365, and I see some people really ripping apart Garoppolo, which I don't think is 100% fair to him, because I'm going to tell you this right now. Like, when people are like, oh, Mitch, the Raiders were 6-11 last season, and how are they going to be better this year? They're going to be better this upcoming season if Jimmy G can stay healthy, because he's going to be a better quarterback than Derek Carr. I'm not saying that Garoppolo is a better quarterback than Carr. I'm saying Jimmy Garoppolo plus Josh McDaniels equals better than Derek Carr plus Josh McDaniels. And if you're better at the quarterback position, you're going to win more football games. On top of that, the other thing that always gets brought up are the injuries around Garoppolo, which is 100% warranted. He has struggled to stay healthy. There is no doubt about that. However, I don't really think that this gets talked about nearly enough. And, you know, that's probably a little bit on my fault because, well, it's literally what I do for a living. But to me, when you look at Josh McDaniels' systems, minus that 2008 season where Tom Brady tore his ACL, people always talked about how healthy Brady stayed. And you go back and you look at a lot of quarterbacks in McDaniels' system, they stay healthy. Why? Ball comes out quick. Ball comes out quick. Where you look at Kyle Shanahan, you look at a lot of the Shanahan systems, quarterbacks haven't stayed healthy. So what if it's a little bit more of a, hey, it was a Shanahan problem and not so much of a Garoppolo problem? You can look at it both ways, there's no doubt about it. But I'm telling y'all right now, when he was playing last season, in the 11 games, 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Even in 2019, if you're able to get that type of production from your quarterback, and now he's going to have Davante Adams. He's going to have Hunter Renfrow. He's going to have Jacoby Myers. He's going to have Michael Mayer, Austin Hooper, and we'll see what ends up going down at the running back position. But you're going to have a good offensive line to keep him upright, which at the end of the day is really going to be the biggest factor in terms of whether or not or how many games this team wins. The other thing that Garoppolo is going to do, he's going to bring swagger. He's going to bring confidence. And when I hear Maxx Crosby today talking to the media, and he said, you know, that he was busting his balls and he can't wait to go up against him. He called him a dog. One of the things that I know a lot of Derek Carr fans will not like to hear, he was a good quarterback. Carr wasn't a dog. Now you're going to be able to get a dog in Jimmy G, and the reason why I like that is because in those big-time pressure situations, I'm talking 4th down and 1, 4th quarter, under 2 minutes, you're in that huddle. I want to be able to look at my quarterback in the eyes, and I want to see nothing but confidence. Is Jimmy the most talented QB? No. But he has played in a lot of big football games, and he has led a lot of game-winning drives. So I'm hoping that we get the good version of Garoppolo. I don't know if you could tell, though. I'm just excited that football's back and Garoppolo's out there on the field. Coming up next here on the Raiders Report, I figured I would get into the injury news because today there were 5 players that were not on the field according to my calculation. The first player that we're going to discuss here is Neil Farrell Jr. I do not have an update on him. I'm just being 100%. He was not out on the field. I don't know why he wasn't practicing. Byron Young, the rookie out of Alabama, he's on the PUP list, so that really shouldn't be too much of a surprise to anybody out there. And then you got Tyree Wilson, the edge. He's on the NFI list because his injury happened when he used to play college football with the Texas Tech Raiders. But what I want to talk about here with Farrell Jr. and Byron Young is I'm actually curious because since we don't have an update on the Farrell injury update, I almost wonder if that's one of the reasons why the Raiders signed Kyle Peko yesterday on July 25th. Now, Peko was a member of this team last season, played in 8 games, and was more of just a nose tackle. But I look at nose tackle and I think, all right, well, that's Neil Farrell Jr.'s position. So maybe there is something going on. Hopefully we can get an update from McDaniels or Ziegler in the next week or so. But also, they worked out a defensive end / defensive tackle as well. Nick Thurman got some reps. He's 6'4", 305 pounds, has played with a few different teams, 8 games, 11 tackles, and 1 tackle for loss in his entire career. And then Forrest Merrill. I'm not going to sit up here and act like I know these 2 players a lot. I watched more tape today than I did yesterday when they worked out. But when you see the injuries to Farrell, Young, and Tyree Wilson, I do think that there's a reason why they brought in those guys for a workout. Now, one of the biggest reasons why some of y'all probably clicked on this video is Nate Hobbs. I was on Twitter, I was on IG, and I saw a few people talking like, oh, shit, why didn't Hobbs practice today? It has, I don't want to say nothing to do with an injury, but it's an injury that you shouldn't be worried about. So over the weekend, Hobbs was in a celebrity softball game where the Raiders players going up against, I believe it was the Vegas Golden Knight players, and Hobbs got rocked in the face with a softball, which you can kind of see here. There's some blood there. He had some swelling on his eye. Bottom line, he's the number 1 cornerback on this roster, which I'm not worried about Hobbs not making the team. Nobody is, right? He's going to be the top guy. But what it does do, which I do like, is it's going to help out this team, Patrick Graham, Ziegler, and McDaniels, make a very difficult decision at the cornerback spot. Because if you were to tell me what, spot has the most competition or the most question marks on the defensive side of the football, it's corner. And then I would say corner and offensive line as a whole for this Raiders team. The other person that did not practice shouldn't surprise anyone. It's Jacobs, and he still hasn't signed his franchise tag, and he wasn't expected to be there. There is no new updates on Josh. I am still hoping that he can get his agent and him together so we can get a deal done. But the reason why I wanted to talk about the Raiders' star running back is because today Maxx Crosby, the face of this organization, spoke about Jacobs. And Crosby said that he supports his guy, and that's what players are going to do. And I totally get, for Crosby's standpoint, to back up his guy. He was in that freaking parking lot with Jacobs on July 17th, hoping that a deal would end up getting done. He did say that he selfishly was trying to convince Josh to, still pull up to training camp and still be here. There was an option that you could hold in and do that. But he also understands why Jacobs is doing this because it's about money, right? And when your guys are trying to get money, every single person here at Chat Sports, I would really hope that they get paid the way that they would want to get paid. I would want everyone who's watching right now to get paid the way that you want to get paid. But sometimes there's certain situations, and I will also say I am a team guy. So that's another reason why I would like to see Josh on the field. But in terms of the news around Jacobs, the reason that the Raiders worked out Abram Smith yesterday, who was the XFL leading rusher. And I was on IG, and I saw a fan being like, if a guy can't rush for 1,000 yards in the XFL, why should the Raiders go out and get him? Breaking news. The only player in the XFL last season to rush for over 500 yards was Abram Smith. They don't play as many games, so that's one of the biggest reasons out there. Average over 5 yards per carry. He did work out with the team. However, though, the Raiders also worked out Benny Snell. And Snell has had some work with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He played college football at Kentucky, probably a little bit more of a bruiser running back. But when you think about both of those type of backs, Smith, bruiser running back. Benny Snell, bruiser running back. Both of those guys, I was going to say can carry a load, but that just sounds awful, can carry a heavy workload in the NFL. So to me, the Raiders do have a certain running back in mind that they are looking for right now, because if Jacobs is unable to play, you're not going to go with a Zamir White show. Like, you're not going to take the 393 carries that Jacobs had last season and give that to Zamir White. No. The way that it's going to be broken up is, let's say you take those 393 touches. I think I said carries before. 393 touches, and I bet Zamir White's get 60% of that, and then everything else just goes running back by committee, like McDaniels, Belichick, the whole Patriots regime has done essentially their entire career. So here's another question here on the Raiders Report, and I appreciate, remember, earlier in the show I said the easiest ways to always help us out here is if I ask you a question, answer it. The more comments we get, the better a video will do. The more likes I get on a show, the better it'll do. If you love and appreciate the content that we provide here, it is 100% free. That's all I can ever ask you to do. So, why for yes and for no will Josh Jacobs be on the Raiders this season? I am still going to continue to sit up here and say that, yes, I am confident that Jacobs ends up playing for this team. I was messaged from an old buddy of mine. He runs a really popular fantasy football podcast, and he was like, dude, what's the latest on Jacobs? What can we tell our viewers? And I said, 85% chance that Jacobs is there week 1 for the Las Vegas Raiders. I did say, though, that there is a 5% chance that he ends up holding out into the regular season because maybe he's going to be petty, maybe he's going to be stubborn. I don't have the answer to that. And then I said there's a 10% chance that he could be traded. I do think that there's actually a better chance that he is traded than him just outright holding out, because this is a money dispute, and that's what Jacobs wants. If he gets traded, he still makes money. If he holds out, he's out $561,000 on average per game, which just simply doesn't make sense. Coming up here on the show, I got 2 players that stood out to me. And anytime I have Raiders training camp, I'll message some of my guys that are actually at the practice, and I'll be like, all right, man, give me a rundown of everything that you got. And the 2 players that he said from the offensive side of the football, and then I said, give me one name from the defensive side of the football. The first name, I kind of laughed when he told it to me. He said Davante Adams, and I go, even without asking this question, I can promise you Davante looked good. But then you hear Garoppolo really, really hyping up Adams today. And if I heard, and that's what my guy is going to tell me, that Adams was by far the best player, cool. I also heard that Jacoby Myers had himself a pretty good day. Sounded like Michael Mayer had a few really clutch catches as well. But the Raiders' offense is going to click, and I'm excited to see what it looks like. The player that he told me, though, looked the best today on defense was Amik Robertson. And when he said, like, it just looked like he was a motivated dude. And Robertson's not dumb, right? He is the only player left on that Raiders 2020 draft class, which is kind of mind-blowing. He was a 4th-round pick, 137 overall. He's not a McDaniels guy. He's not a Ziegler guy. The Raiders go out and they get Marcus Peters, right? Like, the writing is on the wall for Robertson. But now he's got an opportunity with Nate Hobbs out there, and he probably is going to take that, because I've always said, Louisiana Tech, they're the Bulldogs. But Amik Robertson is a dog. Unfortunately for him, he is undersized. But I was told he looked good today. So you know what? I'm going to give Amik his flowers because it sounds like he deserves it. So in conclusion here on today's show, it looked like the first day of training camp. It was sloppy, but it did look organized. And what do I mean by organized? It's year 2 of the McDaniels and Ziegler regime. It sounded like players knew what to expect. It sounded like the coaching staff knew what to expect. It sounded like a whole regime that knew what they were doing entering year 2, because when you learn a new language in the second year, it's a little bit easier than what you learned it in the first year. So some steps forward. Sounds like it was a good first day. It sounded like it was hot as hell, over 100 degrees. And tomorrow, live here on the Raiders Report, we're going to be breaking down more stuff. And if you don't already know, we got a live Madden simulation against the Jets, which is going to be a big game. Jeremy Chuggs and I are breaking it down. Appreciate all of y'all tuning into today's show, and I'll see you tomorrow live here on the Raiders Report.